Good morning, brothers and sisters. We shall start now. A warm welcome to Abode Masters, Brother Joe Huang, Hualien Dharma family, and brothers and sisters around the globe to Saturday Hualien Dharma Talk. Let us start the session for today. Recently, disasters have happened so rampantly, one after another, due to the great imbalance of four elements. Now, with the COVID-19 virus pandemic around the world, Masters have great concern and earnestly urge everyone to repent and adopt vegetarian meal. Going vegetarian is a way to express our sincere piety, to pray for peace and a world free of disasters. It is the purest way of love for all living beings. Now let us send our sincere prayers into the 10 directions. May the Sangha land be free from disaster and peace prevails in the world. Let us sing the prayer song with sincere piousness.
In my heart, I feel deep gratefulness. All my heart is filled with sincere prayer. From all corners of the world, let us join our hearts and pray for a world of harmony and peace. From my heart, I pray. May we join our hands, our hearts as one. Spread the seeds of great love, nurture wisdom evermore. Let us fill the world with hope. In my heart, I feel deep gratefulness. May all the Buddhas know my prayer. All united with one heart, let us end our hate with love. May there be no suffering hereafter.
May all minds be purified. May there be peace in the community. May there be no disaster in this world. Let us together we pray for universal love and blessing with loving respect, gratitude, and confidence. Let us wish every person in our lives a healthy body, an enlightened mind, and a total fulfillment in universal love. Now let us expand this consciousness to include every person in the world, every being in the universe. Let our unified love make this wonderful world even better. Let us all immerse ourselves in the joyful embrace of universal love. Before we hear the wonderful sharings, let us invite Abode Masters to lead us in paying homage to Triple Gems. Let us pay our respects for these teachings and explanations to the Buddha and Master Ching Yen by making 3 sincere vows. Please rise, palms together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And a bow to our beloved Abode Masters who could join us today. Okay. Okay, today we have Sister Stephanie and Sister Moon in this session called E.G. Pure Heart Health Stories, and followed by Brother Joe on the Dharma Discussion. Now let us invite Sister Su Ching for the weekly summary. Sister Su Ching, over to you.感恩.
Good morning. Oh my gosh, I sound like a frog. Give me a sec. So last week, we had Sister Lily and Sister Moon in a lively discussion. Sister Lily recalled the sharing of Master Sis Stephanie's sermon. From the slides prepared, Sister Lily was prepared and determined to share with us her nuggets of gems on the spiritual cultivation of a Bodhisattva on the road to enlightenment. She first spoke of the wisdom of waking up at dawn, and Sister Moon added, positioning our mind to start the day right is really what we want. Secondly is cultivating a mind of goodness with the masses, saving sentient lives by being vegetarian with each day that passes. Following that, we need to develop the Bodhisattva spirit. The more good deeds we sow, the more good karma we will inherit. In Bodhisattva practices, we must persevere and not give up. Every effort is celebrated and not belittled or snubbed. In the planting of good seeds, as one receives blessings, so must one sow blessings as well. And from our wholesome actions will sprout joyfulness with lots of happy stories to tell. Then we had Sister Aichu all the way from the US. Sister Aichu will be 71 years young in July this year. She recounts her life over time in Tzu Chi as a volunteer. Most recently was the fire that burned in 2017 for 24 days. 5,643 buildings totally scorched to the ground in the devastating blaze. Sister Aichu knew she must help as she recounted how her house was spared miraculously, as she rushed to help survivors for 2 years with their long-term recovery. In 2018, she joined the Tzu Chi Spiritual Care Workshop. Empathetic listening, compassionate communication were some things she learned a lot. Sister Aichu encouraged us to learn the sutra together like they do in the US. A monthly class over 18 months throughout the States till October 2023 was quite a following it has. A lot of sharing with thought-provoking questions are posed to those who attend. So successful is the project that Sister Aichu to all other chapters recommend. Sister Aichu then had a session of Q&A, where those who listened to her speak had a chance to hear what else she has to say. Sister Aichu has a smile so warm and genuine. Clearly, she gets better over time, just like fine wine. We look forward to more wisdom Sister Aichu has to share with us next. It is clear that volunteering in Tzu Chi has very positive spiritual effects. That's it from me today. I'll pass over to Sister Stephanie to head on the next session. Over to you, Sister Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sister Su Ching. Always wonderful to listen to your summary, to recap what happened the previous week. Very good evening. And very good evening. I'm still stuck yesterday. Very good morning, brothers and sisters. Yeah, good morning, of course, to our Abode masters, Master Cheng Yen, and of course, all the brothers and sisters. Okay, very grateful to be able to share this session today with Sister Moon. Okay, just give me a minute while can you all see my slide now?
Yes.
Yes, Brother Robert. Okay, so this is actually a story or a sharing by the Abode Shifu on the 25th of June, and it was entitled Exhausting Lifetimes of Retribution in This Life. It was shared by Master Chuan. So Master Chuan started by asking this question: do you believe that kindness always brings blessing? So maybe I ask this question to the floor. So maybe brothers and sisters, if you believe, then you type 1. If you don't think so, that kindness always brings blessing, can you just type 2 in your chat, just to get the morning going? Okay. Let me see. Okay, Sister Su Ching say yes, Sister Moon say yes, Brother Robert. Wow, looks like everybody say yes. 哇，果然是很有智慧啊。Okay, so so the Sifu actually started by sharing this story from Master Tell Story series about the selfless giving of the orphan child. So I'm just going to quickly run through the gist of the story for the benefit of those who don't already know. It was about an old monk who lived in a very old and dilapidated temple. So he aspired to rebuild this temple which he inherited. So he went out to the village to seek alms, and donations. But unfortunately, none of the villagers actually paid any respect to him, and no one was willing to give anything. But there was a poor orphan child who observed this from afar. This child actually, he's born with this ringworm on his scalp. So in the village, right, people don't really pay much attention to him, or actually they look down on him. So for daily living, right, he has to sell biscuits or pastry that he made. And so when he observed the villagers were being disrespectful and unwilling to help the old monk, he felt pity, and then he made like some sort of a little vow within him. He told himself, today, whatever I earn, I'm going to give it to the monk. And that means even to the extent that he had to go hungry, because actually he earns very little. So then he did just that at the end of the day. And the villagers saw, if you look here, the villagers saw, and they was wondering, hey, this boy, you all really didn't think much of him, but wow, he could give to the monk. So they started to spread news that poor orphan child also can help, So people were inspired and said, hey, I also cannot I also must follow suit, isn't it? So not long after that, right, the monk was able to collect enough money to rebuild the temple. Okay. But what happened next was the orphan suddenly, one night, in fact, he went blind. He suddenly went blind. And because of that, right, a few days later, he actually fell and broke his legs. And then a few days later, he actually fell into a septic pond in the village and died. So villagers, right, they quickly gathered around. Nobody could save him. And then everybody was just whispering and say, you see, kindness does not bring blessing at all. So at this moment, right, brothers and sisters, do you still believe kindness brings blessing? If yes, please type 1. If no, please type 2. After listening to this story, the boy helped rebuild a temple, yet become blind, broke his leg, and died in septic pond. Wow, what kind of blessing is that? So maybe we too have seen kind-hearted people being slandered or falling into misfortune. Did it make us doubt the Buddha's teaching or Master's teaching? many people, including myself, as Tzu Chi volunteers, face misfortune even as they do a lot of good, isn't it? So if I check the chat right now, Sister Kaping say blessing in disguise. Okay, Sister Suisan say yes, definitely. So everybody's on this very wise indeed. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next page. Oh, okay. So Master the Sifu said, when misfortune continues to happen, do you actually have a little bit of doubt? Yeah, some of you may have a little bit of doubt, would you? Okay,
Yes,
in the
yes,
power of
Sister
kindness
Stephanie.
that you're doing.
Yes,
Hey,
Sister Stephanie. I
Sister
think
Moon, so good to hear
yeah,
from you.
yeah. I think it's very human to have the doubt when misfortune keeps befalling a person, isn't it? Because if you do not have that mind view, the right view, if you're not exposed to Dharma, you have not received these kind of teachings, or you have not listened, or you have the good fortune to listen to Dharma, the right view is not there, right? And I mean, in this material world, it's very natural. I wouldn't judge those people, because maybe they don't have like you say, they didn't have the causes and conditions to listen to the Dharma before, so they didn't have the right view. So in our worldly world nowadays, it's like everything we do is, there's very little time, but not from the Dharma point of view. The little time is, I have very little time. If I do something, I need to achieve something back in return, isn't it? So, we are so busy thinking of what I'm going to achieve by doing this. We never think doing something that just for the good of others, nothing in return, like the Tzu Chi mantra, right? That we don't expect anything in return, and we let nature take its course, and so on. So I think, most people would think that, if the misfortune continues to happen, why do I continue doing it?
So even if you're a Tzu Chi volunteer, right?
Yes, because
you Tzu Chi volunteer, you're exposed to some of you are exposed to some of us are exposed to the right view, but some of us maybe we have just started. This made me recall a story that I think I shared with you, Sister Moon. Even in my earlier years, right? Actually, we went for a charity meeting, and there were a few new volunteers with us. After the meeting, right? We didn't have a center at that time. We had to go to one sister in Kota Kemuning, go to her shop lot to do the meeting. And after the meeting, right, this couple, their car was stolen, Their car was stolen. So I heard them lamenting, you see, I think the husband or the wife said, come to do this Tzu Chi, car gets stolen. And they never appeared after that.
that's right. I think even in Tzu Chi, well, depending on how long we have been inside, right? Sometimes we have not been touched by that particular part of the Dharma yet, to realize.
Not firm yet, right?
Yes, that's right. When we talk about being kind to others, we're always saying we are being kind to others. But I also have heard of this story of this person. Before you are kind to others, you should be kind to yourself. Am I right? We have to be kind to ourselves too. So he said, okay, I'm going to be very kind to my body. So he observed his strict diet. He eats very healthy food, only organic food, only vegetarian. He does all his exercises. He walks every day, and whatever it is that is wellness, he's diligent. And yet one day he was diagnosed to have cancer. In a way, he's kind. He was kind. He said, I'm kind to my body, but why does this happen to me too? Why does this happen? I must see my friends all, happily drinking, eating all kinds of heavy meat and all that, and they are fine, So, these kind of things really happens all the time in our lives, I think.
Right. Thank you so much, Sister Moon. So I guess this is just when we are looking at that particular situation, like you said now, we're looking at the time now. We expect goodness to happen or blessing to happen in an instant or in a short period of time, right? So maybe we shall continue with the story.
Yes.
Or if anybody wants to say anything about this? Share some of your personal experience.
Yeah, Sister Stephanie.
Hi, Sister Kaping. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, I think you have to believe in the law of karma. It never fails, right? Karmic debt has got to be repaid. But, if you have done enough good things, good deeds, you will have the provisions, the blessings to cushion, the karmic debtors when they come and collect debt. So just like my husband who recently fell from the bicycle, he fractured his elbow, he lost a chunk of flesh and, a fair bit of blood. And I told him that was actually blessing in disguise, right?
Yep.
You didn't hurt your head, didn't hurt your neck or your spine or your hip, but, just your elbow. So you suffered some loss of blood, a chunk of flesh and some pain. So, that part of the karma is past. So you should be very grateful. It's like, so, for all the things that you have done, you had accumulated some blessings. So sometimes we look at things and say, oh, why it happens to me? But we should be asking, thank God it happened to me and it passed lightly. I think,
Right.
that is very important to look at things in a positive way. And I always remember what Master Te Yuan say, right? Things will happen, things that the karma that you have to repay, but thank goodness or thank your lucky star that it happens at the time where you have sufficient reserve of blessings to cushion that when it happens. So it passed lightly, it doesn't cause, great harm to you, or at the time where you have great strength to face such, what we always say, unlucky situation or challenges.
Right.
So that is something that we all have got to keep in mind.
Thank you so much, Sister Kaping. I think it's true. Or it could have been worse, right? It could have been worse. And because you did good, that was a cushion. Okay, Sister Su Ching raised her hands. Yes, Sister Su Ching.
Hi, I just wanted to share two things. Firstly is what I've learned through my travels. People in Terengganu have a way of always saying mujo. Mujo is thank goodness. Everything that happens, whether it is good or bad. So if something happens that is bad, and then you will go mujo that it wasn't worse. So I think there's always it could have happened even worse, that you can survive it and it happened. It's not a bad thing. Very recently, actually just last Sunday, I had a flat in my tire, which was a little bit chaotic because I don't know how to change a tire. And then the following day when I went to the shop, there was again a series of drama. But what happened was I couldn't fetch my son from the school. So I took a Grab to his school, and then we took a train back instead. And we realized that the train from his school, which is actually very near, to the house where I can actually just easily pick him up, only took 20 minutes when every day I would commute an hour each way. So as it turned out, he enjoys the train ride because he's got friends going to the train, and he enjoys his independence. And for me, I have a lot of time, like 40 minutes now, to be able to do my thing and making me more productive. So it was really win-win. So what started out as really what I thought was an unfortunate event, a flat tire, oh my goodness, all so sweaty and all that, became very good. But so what I'm saying is there's always a blessing. I have this belief, no matter how bad, there's always a blessing. You just wait for it, it will come.
And so much, Sister Su Ching, such a wonderful sharing. Really, it was a blessing in disguise. It was a silver lining, actually, in the dark clouds, right? You never know what's going to happen next. So if we can continue, I'll continue with a story of Sister or Teacher Wu Jingyi that Abode Master mentioned. Okay, let us listen to her story. This sister, right, in 1990, she first met Tzu Chi when she attended the Jingzi Aphorism Teachers Training in Hualien. She was so deeply touched by this Jingzi 教学, because it was very practical and it was very beautiful way to teach because she's a teacher. So she immediately, when she returned to school, she started to use this Jingse aphorism in her lesson. And, you know, it was like, wow, the students really liked it, and they took to it like ducks to water. And she was so encouraged that she started to share with, you know, the teachers in the next door classes. You know, and the teachers saw, yeah, we know we like it, but, you know, we don't know how to do it. So she told them, no, so long I have the free period, right, I would teach anyone's class. So that's what she did, you know, really out of this kind of thought of hers to spread something good. And one time, even a neighbor overheard she doing this Jingse aphorism teaching. And then the neighbor asked her, can you teach my children also? Because it sounded very good, you know. So what happened was she said, okay, why not? So from her home, at her dining table, from 3 kids of her neighbors, this Jingse aphorism teaching, right, spread and grew and expanded until the whole community in her place was in Pingtung lah. Okay, but a master shared, actually there was a lot of suffering in teacher Jing Li behind her kindness. What is it? Over the 30 years, actually, teacher Jing Li's immense kindness have led and guided many people to join Tzu Chi. You know, many have become commissioners as well. So you can imagine really the power of her kindness has sown many great seeds and bore many great fruits as well. But so the master said, do you know how she was able to do so much? Actually, this is the sadness behind the kindness. Actually, both her husband and son have depression. It's a kind of anxiety, depressive anxiety. So at home, right, you know, it's very, very unbearable for her to stay home. She always say she actually felt like a homeless person, you know, like her heart just didn't belong there. She just feel like she's like a foreigner living in the house. So Tzu Chi actually gave her a place, you know, of refuge, of solace. So therefore, she used her time, right, as much as she can to promote Jingse aphorism teaching, which was something so good that she found. So throughout this whole time, in fact, her family posed many obstacles to her. They even prevented her from growing out, you know. So what she had to do, to overcome this, so she has to, like, you know, put all her things into the car, wear her just normal clothes, didn't let them know that she was going out to do Tzu Chi. Once she went out, right, she would go out the whole day. And the whole day she'll be doing Tzu Chi. And even there are activities sometimes, you know, between, right, there are other activities at another time, she would just sleep in her car. So that's why she say actually she felt very much like a homeless person sometimes. And then she would devour master's books, you know, and diligently spread the Jingse teachings and wherever she go, day and night. That's what she does, Mondays to Fridays. She kind of takes some break to be with her family on weekends lah. Then Tzu Chi is her spiritual home and become a source of refuge for her. So long there's affinity, anyone, anytime, she would teach the Jingse aphorism stories. Therefore, Master said, right, actually, for teacher Jing Li, she transformed the stress that she has at home into what? You know, this tool that she has, this Jingse aphorism teaching, to joys of sharing Jingse aphorism, to bring joy to other people as well. And in the process, influence a lot and transform a lot of people. So Master went on to say how she did it. Actually, there was a lot of pain to bear. And how she bear it is actually by the strength of her vows. To outsiders, right, her husband seemed very normal one, because you know, mental illness, I'm having gone through mental illness myself. It's not like you're physically, there's an M on your, or D on your head that say, oh, I'm depression patient, or I have anxiety, or A that says I have anxiety. There's nothing to show for it, you know. Like if you have cancer, yeah, you can see your body emaciating, or, you know, there's a growth or a tumor. But mental illness is actually intangible. You seem very normal, just like people never imagine I had depression. No one can tell he had mental issue. So no one can really feel like, yeah, man, are you sure your husband is like that? Just like same thing for me, all right? So, but actually his condition started to worsen until he had to quit his job. And at home, he started to be so forgetful and do very funny things that would endanger their lives. And he would always go on spending sprees, buying things that they didn't even need, and started to jam the house up with so many things. And he even once bought a second-hand car and gave it away to a friend. Can you imagine if you lived in this house? I'm very thankful, but at that time, actually, my depression, I managed it well with the Buddha's teachings. I did a lot of meditation, and I listened to a lot of Dharma. And I hung on to words that I could understand from Master, and I practiced it at that point of time. But actually, the son's condition also became worse. He became a hoarder, and then he lost his job and also divorced his wife. And he will frequently, when he's outside, right, he will get into altercations with others. And because of this, right, the father will always cite the son, and then the complaint about the wife. Therefore, right, husband and wife were constantly at odds. So I think all of you can imagine, despite all these kindness that she was doing, despite all the joys that she was bringing to people around her, at home, there was still a storm. But despite that, right, Sister Jing never retreated from the path. In fact, she was determined to do even more. Even though it was unbearable, she gritted her teeth and entered the masses with the strength of her vows to serve in Sati. I think we are all taught by Master that with vows, there will always be strength. And with vows, causes and conditions will manifest for better things, for us to carry it out, for better things to come. In fact, many benefit factors appeared and helped her to spread the mission. They even donated land, like a gong xiu chu, just to, because of this, they donated time. In fact, there was 16, she recruited 16 Ta'ai Mama, and this is like the 16 princes that Master is talking about now. And these 16 Ta'ai Mama all became commissioners, and they all went back to their own community to serve, So what made me think about the 16 princes that Master is talking about nowadays. And in time, the Jingsi aphorism lesson spread to 5 districts and 21 schools throughout Pingtung. So it kind of made me think about us walking this path paved by Master, the 10 merits that we would gain as we will continue to practice and walk the path home. The 4th merit says that practitioners will be protected by all Buddhas. Although they cannot save themselves yet, they can still save others because they keep close to the good and the wise. And we are just like the young prince who, even though we are still young and not able to rule, imagine she can't even rule her roost, her home, but we are revered and we have influence, to the people who have affinity with us because we are guided by the king and the queen. So I'm very touched because when I go through the Sutra of Infinite Meanings, I see this in Sister Jing. So behind Teacher Jing's great acts of kindness lies really stories of untold suffering. Even if you tell, people cannot understand, people cannot resonate. It's just like mental illness is like that. Nobody can really understand because it is intangible. And there are a lot of internal obstructions actually. So to us who are practicing, especially for us who are on the path yet suffering so much, do we ever wonder, are there real benefits in doing kindness? So I'll continue with the story, right? The next part. After the orphan passed away, his spirit visited the old monk while he was in meditation. He came and then he, prostrated to the monk and thanked the monk, and he revealed to the monk for what he had done in his past. He committed a lot of evil, a lot of killing, stealing, plundering. Therefore, in many lifetimes, he was reborn as an animal, as a slave. And eventually in the past life, he was born as an orphan with this scalp worm, a scalp ringworm. But since he had helped the monk fulfill his vows of rebuilding the temple after he died in the septic pond, that wasn't the end of it. He was reborn in a higher realm, actually. So he told the monk, please explain this to the villagers to help them understand the law of karma, to help them, to stop them from committing the speech karma that says, there's no blessing in doing good, because this would cut off other people's root of goodness. Because they need to understand, as he did now, in fact, the way he died was, or the way he had his life was actually due to his own past karmic causes. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly... yes, sister.
Yeah.
Yes, Sister Moon.
Before you go to the lessons learned, I have this story that is of a friend who is so similar to the teacher Jing Yu.
Yeah.
She's a very nice lady, but she came from a poor family. It's a friend, it's a close friend. Poor family, married husband, but the husband's family kind of like, don't treat her well, and they don't treat her well by not even in a subtle way. I mean, quite forward, with words that hurt, actions that hurt, and all that. And she took it, and she bear with it, including the husband who also don't treat her well. Okay. However, she never thought that she will leave the husband, because of the children, right? Her love for the children. And so she take all this kind of treatment, and one thing after another will come to her, quarrel, not agreeing with anything. At one time, it was so bad that she almost needed hospitalization because the stress was too much. And yet towards the end, every single member of the husband's family get into medical situations. Our mother-in-law got cancer. Our father-in-law also got problem with another type of cancer. And she is the only one who takes care of all of them. In spite of being treated like that, she's finally the one who takes care of them, takes them to the hospital, see what to do, which doctor to see. The father-in-law, it was so funny, he said, my father-in-law told the nurses, oh, I'm waiting for my favorite daughter-in-law to come. I never know when I became a favorite daughter-in-law, but it was a very touching thing for me to hear such a story that the father-in-law turned around before his death. At least he was able to show gratitude before he died, isn't it? I think that was a good thing for the father-in-law as well. But my friend, in the end, sister-in-law apologized to her, asked for her forgiveness. Mother-in-law made peace with her. So to me, this friend of mine, and throughout her life, she does all kinds of charity for Buddhist groups, for NGOs, She is a corporate person, but when it's coming to do charity, she's very pure and innocent. If it's right, doula, that kind of person. So, but it makes me think that as they know, how to lighten their burden, they also, because of maybe previous karma done, there must also have been some blessings, because these blessings come to trigger them to be able to seize this lifetime, these moments, to not, be overwhelmed by this kind of difficult situations.
Retaliate.
Yeah. And, not to return hurt for hurt, And there must be some blessings from that. And it is such a blessing also that it must be a huge blessing actually for them to be able to lighten their luggage in this path, in this
right.
Yeah.
Lighten the luggage, truly. That's what Brother Ching would say. It's a process of purification. Incidentally, the story that you mentioned about your friend reminded me of exactly like my mother-in-law. The in-laws actually gave her a lot of problem. And throughout it all, right, she would just do her duties, be kind to every member, and she would keep quiet. Until the end, right, all the people who bullied her praised her and say that she is the best. And she continued to do kindness in the ways that she could. And you know what? At her wake, right, she wasn't a Tzu Chi person, but she always supported Tzu Chi Dialysis Center. At her wake, 200 Tzu Chi people came, to do chanting for her. Until people wondering, the people at next door wondering, hey, who is this? Is she a VIP? She wasn't. She was just a very simple woman with a kind heart,
Yeah, amazing.
And amazing. And that I still remember that day during the funeral, right? There was this gentle rain, that came as the procession went up. It was so wonderful, right? Okay, so we go to the lessons learned. My master, the Chuan Shifu, said, if we only see the good we have done in this life, but not the heavy karma committed in the previous life, just like the story of the boy just now, it is quite hard for the normal, ordinary people to accept that being kind would always bring blessings, isn't it? Right? Because Master went on to say, there is no suffering without causation one. If we do not know the law of karma, then we will always find suffering unbearable. But if we know, I think for us, we know the Four Noble Truths, right? There is suffering, there's causation, there's definitely a cessation of suffering because there is always a path to the cessation. If we take Dharma to heart, every day we listen, we put it into practice, engrave it in our heart, we will definitely be able to transform every negative condition to a positive one. As Brother Chin tells us, Dharma, I would say, put into practice would always cancel karma. So in facing difficulties, Master Tzu Chuan reminds us never to forget our initial aspirations, as Master always reminds us too, and our vows, our great vows, which is what? For us, is to walk the Bodhisattva path, all right? And to return home to our pure nature. So that is our direction. So whatever that comes, right, just like the day before yesterday, we were talking about this. Yeah, it's just like us want to go home to our home after work. If there's a traffic jam, would we just say, I don't want to go home lah? Would we just give up? No, right? So never forget, this is a journey home. So the other lessons learned is that in the process of transforming herself, right, Teacher Jingyi has influenced many to join Tzu Chi and change their lives for better, right? So this, when we transform ourselves, when we start to eliminate our own affliction, when we start to renounce our habitual tendencies, people will be, we are changing. We will actually be able to inspire others. We have the good influence over others to also change their lives. At this point, I think it's very important. Master said, Teacher Jingyi, she reflected on her past unwise thinking. I think this is for us, especially on the path. Master always say, 忍 patience, be patient. So we say, okay, I suffer my karma, but did we digest it? Did we let go of it? No, she suffered her karma. Yes, she did. But she reflected and said, she suffered it unwillingly, even though she was serving relentlessly at every opportunity. This reminds me, of what Brother Chin also told us. When we practice, we must practice uncomplainingly. Or Master's advice to us, when we are willing to bear, we get discount. When we are unwilling to bear, what happens? We'll get interest. So if this happens to us, right, truly, I catch myself sometimes complaining also. Therefore, really, we must remove that and continue to give blessings to others and ourselves. So, understanding the law of karma, Teacher Jingyi was able to face all her life becoming stand willingly and treats every one of it as a life lesson to become a better person. Better person means what? Actually, we are all in the process of refining our character to find our true nature, isn't it? And towards the end, the Shifu guidance, if I can just sum it up, is this. By deeply understanding karmic retribution, Okay, deeply understanding, not just knowing and understanding, it was deeply understanding, I think, have faith in the teaching. We can then live out our wisdom life with ease and peace, because we don't know when the karmic seed is going to sprout out and pose another obstacle to us or another impermanence to us. Therefore, despite the pain and challenges, if we look at it as all as an opportunity to purify our past karma, we will definitely be very rejoicing, isn't it? And I would like say, like, bring it on. Yeah. Just every time one karmic seed manifests, it's an opportunity to lighten my baggage, honestly. So being able to do kindness, Master say, in the midst of suffering karmic retribution is truly a great blessing. Just like many of the brothers and sisters here, we are on the path. While on the path, we receive the teaching. And we are able to have so many platforms to continue to do kindness. Isn't that having the tool to deal with the challenges, becoming ease and at peace with it? Isn't that a great blessing? Because for me, this lifetime, if I'm able to transform myself, that would be the greatest blessing. And Master says, aspire. We must actually aspire to have the opportunity to exhaust our karmic retribution in this lifetime. All right? Then when we come back, our future lives, we will be more peaceful, we will be more blessed. Or in Brother Chin's words, because we are practicing in the mind continuum, can you imagine the burden, the affliction, the negative affinities, the habitual tendencies, they're all gone. Then when you come back, right, wow, you can just continue your practice, like all the great Pusa that we see, around us. How come they practice? So we don't compare, but we rejoice for them and we learn from them how they are able to travel to practice so smoothly. But if we have these retributions or karmic, negative karmic seeds, or obstacles, we must use the power of vows to overcome the power of karma, so that in the next life, we travel light. I would definitely want to travel light in my next life. So bring it on, okay? Because we are so blessed to be on the path.
Sister Stephanie,
Yes.
It's like nowadays, when you understand this, when you meet with very challenging situations, it helps one to stay calm, isn't it? Because when something happens now, I ask myself, is it only the bad? If you miss a plane, if you miss a plane, for example, right? After so much preparation and all that, and you miss a plane, then you get very upset because you've got so much to lose when you miss a plane, right? But today I would ask myself, it's okay. There must be a reason. Maybe you cannot see the reason now, but there must be a reason. That the plane one is a simple
analogy.
Yeah. But more serious things, like never too bad in my life. So why do I get health issues? Why do I have to suffer health issues?
Why my children are like that?
Yeah. Why my children have so much problem? So there must be a reason for it. Sometimes, I think most times, in fact, the reason may not be clear to us, right? But with this understanding, you are able, like you say, when your heart is willingly accepting it, the suffering actually lessen. The suffering that you're undergoing, I find it helps to lessen that suffering, and so it carries you, through life easier. You sail through life easier, and I think that's very important. Not to, for example, when people are, for example, we are asked, we want to be kind. I think most of us want to be kind, but the fellow is really nasty, so we don't want to be kind to the fellow. So the question to ask is, do not allow another person to determine how kind you want to be.
Right.
Never do that. Because if you want to be kind, I will be kind. If he's nasty to me, that's his problem. But I will not let him have the power to be unkind, to make me unkind, because he shouldn't touch me. He shouldn't change my path in life, you know. So I think that is very important.
That's so wonderful, sis, inside Sister Moon, because there's a poem that comes with this at the end, and it reflected just what you mentioned just now. But are there any brothers and sisters on the floor who would like to say something at this point?
Hi, yeah, good morning,
Hi,
Sister
Sister
Stephanie and
Irene.
Sister Moon. Oh, yeah,
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Like what Sister Moon said, well, I'm really grateful to Sister Stephanie for sharing everything, because every line is really meaningful. And for me also, you know, the state of calmness, I suddenly felt, maybe I'm very thankful, you know. I've been facing some storm, and the storm keep coming one after another, you know. And don't know, I tell myself that day, you know, we lost a lot of money at a time when we couldn't afford it, and all because of someone's decision, and really do not know. So I tell myself, instead of being my usual self lah, to me, so I'm down with mental depression before, and even now. So then, but for some reason, I don't know why, I was very calm that day during the auction. I tell myself, things happen for some reason, although I do not know the reason sometimes. So just accept, you know. And can you imagine, just only half a year, we lost another how much money. And I don't know why I was very calm. So I say, wow, this one something not achievable last time. So I was very surprised. I only think of harmony, because if I get angry, if I get sad, if I get worried for them, the whole family will be in disharmony, because they will still blame you, even though the things are all not done by me, you know, but it's easier to point finger at me. So just remain calm and just accept. And just like the story, I also felt, why so many things happen to me life one after another. And my thought is, I must have done very bad thing last time, you know, because I will not know my past life. So like what Sister Stephanie said, okay, bring it on. At least this lifetime, I can repay as much as possible. And suddenly, you know, recently, right, you know, I down with COVID, even I was like so happy that day, cough stopped already, finally. And then the next thing, yesterday, I took bath and washed my hair. 15 minutes later, for the whole day, I cough like continuous, non-stop, you know. Then I say, ayo, what is happening again? But just accept. And I don't know for what reason today, this morning, I find that maybe the other day, my husband suddenly asked me to go out for breakfast. Then I asked him, we continue to Morib. Sorry, got time or not. And then I suddenly, you know, for first time, you know, I was like walking to the toilet break, and I saw one lady suddenly jump. Yeah. Then she told me, there's a dead snake. I said, where? Baby snake. Then I really saw the baby snake dead, you know. And she's like kicking it, you know. I got so shocked. Then I said, shall we bury the baby snake? He said, die already, no need to bury. Then I walked to the washroom, then come back, I never forget. I still look at the snake. Then I got no tools, and I was afraid of my husband usually. But I never gave up. I go back and sit. Then I think, what am I going to do? Then without him noticing, I just take a spoon and I quickly go there again at the pretext of going toilet and quickly dig the small sand hole and buried the snake. So maybe that's doing kindness. So then suddenly get COVID now, maybe it's a blessing in disguise, because whatever need to happen, it will happen one. And even the day at Kaohsiung, I hear, doesn't mean churchy people, we eat vegetarian, doesn't mean we don't get COVID. So when it comes, we repay one more debt. So accept it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Sister Irene. And as I mentioned to you, Sister Irene, this episode, right, this sharing is merits are dedicated to you. Okay. So may you walk light in the near future and also in the next life. Okay. And truly, don't think that we are, I think the master also mentioned, don't think that we're vegetarian, we won't get COVID, because the master say for beginnerless time, maybe you have been eating meat. So, so do not think that just because you're eating vegetarian in this life, you won't get COVID. Huh? Okay. So, all right. So I want to share this beautiful poem. I asked my daughter in UK to help me translate it because I didn't know how to translate that day. And she was very glad that I let her do this, but I'm just going to share the main points. Your kindness is your blessing, meaning kindness not bring blessing, but it is your blessing. Why? Because kindness is a virtue. It is something that we strive for. It is the root of a good character. It is invaluable, so be wise to whom you give it to. And to those who aggravate you, do not conceal your kindness out of fear of getting hurt. So be kind even to the most unkind. And that's the hardest thing to do, isn't it? Previously, but now it's not, because we found the path. Be rest assured, for those who are kind, love and light would follow. To those who have been tricked or suffer losses, Sister Irene, you will be rightfully compensated. For those who have been bullied and shunned, you will be dutifully protected. Because we were all once beings of kindness. Kindness is just we have been through cycles of hurt and pain. Evil schemes may dampen our spirit now, but never let them change our kind heart, as Sister Moon pointed out just now. Because kindness is a virtue. It is a pillar to rely on. This is one of the pillars, isn't it? So long we persevere, joy and abundance will definitely arrive. True joy, true abundance will come. When we are kind, losses are only temporary, because the worldly world is temporary. Blessings will follow, as the heavens will never let you down. So no matter what the hardship, persevere in being kind. For those who are kind will always be protected and receive blessings. And this reminds me of our very 4 basic practice of the 4 immeasurables, 慈悲喜舍. Starts with loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And in ending this session, I would just like to share this. Have faith and persevere in our kindness, as it is our pillar of strength. So keep shining on. Can earn right on the dot. Okay, so in fact, this is the pillar of our home, our royal abode of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This is one of the pillars, isn't it? Yeah, can earn her. So I will stop my sharing now and return the platform to Sister Su Ching. Oh, or should I call Brother Joe to come up?
Yeah, Brother Joe, cảm ơn.
Oh, Sister Su Ching, cảm ơn.
Oh, powerful. So touching. Cảm ơn. Okay, over to Brother Joe, our great teacher. Cảm ơn, Brother Joe.
Wow. So yeah, I think it's truly an honor to be able to be part of all these stories, because I am not part of the entire process, and I didn't participate. And if it were just myself, I don't think I would be able to have the wisdom and have the perseverance to be able to get through all this time. I think when there are issues that we feel that we cannot overcome, at that moment, it's one of the darkest, it's one of the hardest things. I could imagine, but I don't think I've ever experienced that, because just like what Sister Irene said, I think it's one of those moments where I don't think you will understand unless you go through it, but you could sort of understand that it's something that you cannot bear. Like, if you've never gone through it, or if you're still in it, you probably don't think that you can get through it. And I've always believed that that challenge, that obstacle for all of ourselves, for all of us, there exists this obstacle, this challenge that we cannot get through. I believe that doesn't matter how powerful you are or how wise you are, there exists a situation or a condition, there exists a challenge, an obstacle that you just cannot overcome. I believe that. And so you're going to say, well, Brother Joe, that means that is so pessimistic. It's not optimistic. You're just thinking that, oh yeah, I'm getting through 100 of the past obstacles. And then that there's going to be the 101st where you just can't get through. And I believe that. However, I also believe that the more we are learning, the more that we are listening, the more that we are experiencing, and then we're gaining in our experience and gaining in our wisdom, I believe that the day that obstacle that we cannot overcome hits us is being pushed back further and further and further, because we are gaining in experience, we're gaining in our strength, we're gaining in our wisdom. So I believe that there is this problem where I can't overcome at the present moment. Luckily, this obstacle that I cannot overcome isn't here yet. So everything that I do now, everything that I think, everything that I learn, everything that I hear and listen will build on me, so that when this obstacle comes, I will be able to overcome, or that the obstacle that I cannot overcome will be pushed back. So instead of coming tomorrow, it will be coming the day after. And then through the time, I will be gaining strength, gaining my perseverance, and obtaining more wisdom to bypass all these obstacles. I believe that. So while I believe that there exists a situation where I cannot overcome, I also believe that before that situation comes, I'm gaining a lot of strength and solutions along the way. This is what I believe. So I think today's sharing really is giving us that strength to show that you might think that there is no solution. You might think that there is no hope, but there is. And don't give up. And by being kind or showing kindness or doing deeds of kindness, that is the solution. It's not just part of the solution. That is the solution. While you might not be understanding that that is the solution, you are already on the way to the solution by committing yourself to it. And even through the hardest time, when you're looking for a solution, sometimes by being kind, you are not doing what you think is a solution, when in fact that is the solution. And so this is something that it gets to be philosophical. So sometimes the more you are searching for something, the less likely you're going to find it. And so the way that Tzu Chi's Dharma, Master's Dharma, teaches us is that, well, if you take your mind off of this problem and focus yourself by rechanneling your energy and your experience to help those that you have the power to help. So you're facing with the challenge that you have no power to overcome. However, you do have the power to help others where they thought that they have no power, but you do. So by helping them and not focusing on your problem and focusing on finding a solution to your problem, you are indeed on the way to finding the solution to your own problems. So I think this is it's mythical. It's something that you look for an answer by not looking for an answer. So that's philosophical already, but Master had proven once and once again where helping others is the answer, even though things could be troubling you. But eventually, somehow, the solution will come up and it will allow us to pass. Okay, so thank you team, for the Pure Heart team, for always sharing these wonderful moments and wonderful stories. It really lifts us up and really showing that things, it doesn't have to be this way, and it could be a lot better. And today, I wanted to share with continuing with what we've been talking about in the past, and I think there's a lot of it that also connects to what we hear today, and also Sister Stephanie's sharing, and also Sister Moon's their different, the interaction, and also Sister Irene. I think that a lot of it has to do with attitude and how we view this world and how we view the problems. So I wanted to get into, once again, the Lotus Sutra, chapter 1 and 2. It always brings me such more and more clarity by when I get into this chapter. And when you compare this to many things that you experience or many stories you hear, you really begin to see a lot of things that is very clear. Okay, so let us review what I think the main points of the first chapter. Now we remember that the first chapter, it talks about all the phenomena that were never seen before, and how special that after the Sutra of Infinite Meanings, that the Buddha goes into the meditation stance, where began to meditate, and it requires the conversation between the disciples to allow all the other audience to be able to understand what is going on. So to summarize very quickly the main points of chapter 1, I think there are 3. And the first point is, the first chapter emphasizes the importance of the next chapter, which is chapter 2. Now, it does that by showing all the phenomena that had happened, that had never happened before in the time of the Buddha. Okay, in the time of our current Buddha, that it has never happened before. So therefore, what is coming up next must be very important. That's what chapter 1 does. It paves the way to show you that something very important is coming up. And not only that, but it also tells you that the Lotus Sutra had happened infinite times before. And in the word of the Manjushri, one of the disciples that was conversing, that he knew that the 20,000 Buddhas before the current Buddha, the same thing had happened right before something very important was spoken, was preached. And that was called the Lotus Sutra. So this had happened before, time and time again. And the third thing that was very important that I think out of this chapter was that not only had it happened infinite times before, but we were all there before. And we were all there and we just forgot about it. So I think these are the three main points that I think out of chapter 1. Yeah, it goes into a lot of details, but I think if you want to summarize the purpose of chapter 1, the main aspects of chapter 1 is to tell you that chapter 2 is really important. And it's to tell you that this had happened many, many times before. And it's to tell you that we were all there once, but we just forgot about it. Okay, so that's chapter 1. In my opinion, reading into chapter 2, coming from chapter 1, out of all the details, imagine that, the master goes into the depth, it goes into so many details about the flowers, about the kind of flowers that falls down from the sky, about all the different treasures, about all the different thoughts, about all the different movements of the earth, how the earth and how the world shakes, and the 6 different directions that it shakes, and analyzes the 6 directions. Well, that's a lot of details. And I think out of all the details, the 3 important points were, hey, the importance is not here, but next it's coming up, and that it happens many times before. That's how we knew that when it hasn't happened yet, we know that something was going to happen because of the past experience, and that we were all there once before. And I think chapter 1 is very, very philosophical in this too. Why? Because it's telling you, and that's what I meant when I listened to the sharing earlier. It really focuses on, number 1, the problem or the importance or the focus isn't the problems that we're facing, right? Like Stephanie at the end mentioned about the poem and about the lesson learned, and that being kind and what Master said, and being kind is already taking us to the solution. And so the emphasizing that the challenge, the obstacle isn't what the main focus is, but being kind is, because you are already being kind. And you are already doing the deeds of kindness. You're already saying the words of kindness. You're already thinking kind thoughts. That is the focus, not all the problems that you cannot get through. So this is already like what chapter 1 is sort of philosophically represents. That in of itself, the chapter 1 tells you, I am not this important. I am telling you all these things that happen just so that you know that what's coming up is really important. So I think what all these obstacles are telling us is that being kind is really important. So that's what, as I was listening to what Stephanie was sharing, philosophically or maybe there's a deeper meaning to telling us is that, hey, maybe this is something connected to chapter 1. So let's continue on, right? So Lotus Sutra had happened infinite times before. We also encounter these problems infinite times before. I'm not talking about the problems where it stops us. No, there are problems that we got through. I mean, we're still here. That means all the problems, at least we managed, right? We managed and then we got through them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, where we would already be beaten and defeated by our problems. But no, we're here. That means we've gotten through these problems. So it tells you that, hey, this happened many times before. And look at how you've gotten through. Look at how you have gotten through. And then it tells you that we were all there once before too. That we were once stuck in this problem. And we were once thought that we cannot get through either, but we got through. I think that is also what chapter 1 is sort of philosophically telling us. But anyway, I didn't think of it until I hear the stories, the sharing from today. But it's sort of, has some echo points, it has some echoing points where chapter 1 is not focusing on itself. It's telling that maybe you should focus not on me, but on what's coming up next. And it also tells you that maybe you have forgotten, but you are more powerful than you think because you have already gone through so many problems. You are more powerful than you believe because look at all the challenges that you have overcome and look at who you have become today and look at all the kindness that you have done. So I think that's what this chapter 1 is really telling us. But out of the context of Lotus Sutra, it's telling you that chapter 2 and beyond is very important, not just me. And it's telling you that the same solution and the same phenomenon happens before. Not just this one time, but it happened before. You were there too. You just forgotten about it. Wow, look at the similarities between the Lotus Sutra and what we have just talked about in terms of depression, in terms of our challenges. Okay, so that's chapter 1. And so I briefly talked about this, how to demonstrate the importance of the Lotus Sutra in chapter 1, well, all the phenomena that had never happened before in the 4 decades of Buddha's teaching, right? So Buddha's teaching, by the time that the Lotus Sutra happened, it was about 42 years after Buddha was enlightened, after Buddha was awakened, after Buddha became the Buddha, from the prince became the Buddha. Okay, so in the 4 decades that after Buddha's enlightenment, all the phenomena that was explained, introduced in the first chapter, it never happened in those 4 decades. That means it must be very special. That means it must be something that something big is coming. Okay, so that's how it demonstrates. So what is coming? Lotus Sutra chapter 2, skillful means. Why is the chapter named skillful means? And we're gonna get into that. So as we talk more about the first chapter and the second chapter, it gets clearer and clearer what the situation was. And one of the things that I wanted to mention, I remember there was one time in our session on Saturday mornings, I think it was Brother Joe Huang who shared the verbal words of the Lotus Sutra. I remember he recited a particular excerpt from the sutra. I think it was in the first chapter, and it was talking about all the different kinds of insects and all the different kinds of animals where and he was explaining it, speaking out loud the words in English, and you could hear and you could just feel like, wow, the words are beautiful. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper in that the sutra might be beautiful, but the conversation, the tone of the conversation was lost. How was the Buddha speaking to his disciples? We know the words. I mean, I know they were translated, I know, and they were beautified to make it into more poetic. They were top of the mind, the top people in literature back in the days, thousands of years ago when they did the translation. The emperor would gather the top minds of the society, of the kingdom, of the empire, and then helping the translation. The translation itself were divided into 2 parts. 1 is the translation of the meaning. 2 is the transcription of the text. And what that means is you have someone who, like a Dharma master, who is able to understand the original Sanskrit and then explain the meaning. And then you have the people that would transcribe this in the words of the modern time in China. And when they write it, they wanted to make sure with the utmost respect, with the utmost sincerity, they wanted to make sure that the words are not mundane. The words are not trivial. They wanted to make sure that this is, I don't know if it's grandiose, but it's something that will be able to preserve thousands of years. And indeed it has. Thousands of years later, like today, no one would challenge the Chinese version of the Lotus Sutra because the words and the verses were simply too beautiful. Okay, so because they were composed and transcribed by people of the top mind at the time throughout the empire. So you can imagine that the words are very poetic and they're very beautiful. They were very sophisticated because one word could have many, many, many meanings. And at the time, you could imagine that the Dharma master would be sitting atop and explaining through the original text into the modern tongue and the modern language, and explaining to the people there who had the top mind of the empire, of the entire kingdom. And then they were listening and they go like, yeah, I think I understand. And then they gather to make the most beautiful verses. That's wonderful. And it will stand for thousands of years to come. However, the tones were lost. Was Buddha angry? Was the student lost? Was the disciples worried? How were they communicating? When you put them in words, and maybe at the time, there is no addendum, there's no, you don't mark a little asterisk, a little star that says angrily, right? Or hastily, or hesitantly, right? We don't know the mood at the moment. We don't know what happens. We just know that this word was said. You could say the same words, like, this is not so. You could say it this way, this is not so. Or this is not so. Or this is not so. The same words will be transcribed in the sutra, but the emotion is lost. So a lot of times we are left to imagine, to think, to reimagine, to further imagine what it might have been. Instead of just reading the text, but imagining what's happening, imagining why this is so. And that's where I jump into the sutra and I swim in it. And then I began to think, well, if I were the disciple, what would I say? If I were the teacher, what would I think? If I were just a bystander, what would I do? That's how I read chapter 1 and chapter 2. And this is how and so I'm going to share with you how I feel. So if chapter 1 tells you the 3 main points that I just explained, that something important is coming up, that this has happened many times before, that we were all we're all once part of all this. When chapter 2, when finally the Buddha came out of the meditation, opened his eyes, right? We don't know how long chapter 1 lasts. Maybe 1 day, maybe 2 days. See, this is another thing. The time is lost out of all this text. How long did chapter 1 take place? How long, maybe chapter 1 took place in a week, maybe in 10 hours, maybe in 2 hours. I don't know. We don't know. Maybe you can guess, but we don't know. So after chapter 1, when all the phenomenon, all the wondrous phenomenon that happened, and Master even go into detail explaining what each of the phenomenon actually meant and the meanings behind all of that, I began to ask myself, if I were one of them, just like what Lotus Sutra chapter 1 says, right? One of the main points is that I was there too, and I was one of them. If I was there, and I'm using the current me, if Joe, right now, this me, I transpose myself to the time when Lotus Sutra happened, and I'm seeing all these things as it happened. I am part of this situation where all this happens. What would I do? Obviously, I will be sitting there, or I'll be standing there in amazement. I'll be thinking, wow, this is amazing, right? And listening to my brothers up there, my elders, explaining how this is already, this is something big and something big is going to happen. I'm going to be excited, right? I'm going to be very excited. I'm going to be very, very excited to know that something important is coming up. After all, Buddha has been teaching us for 42 years at that moment, and something new or something more important is coming. So I'm excited. I'm a true follower of Buddha, maybe for a year, maybe for 2 years, maybe for 40 years. But however long it is, I am prepared. I want to know more, right? So when Lotus Sutra chapter 2 comes around, which is the moment when the Buddha opened his eyes, if I were the student, if I were the disciple, what would you like to ask? I would ask, I would raise my hand if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible, but if it's possible, see, there's a lot of ifs because we weren't there and there was not enough information for us to imagine what happened. But if you were there, if I was there, and after all these, I don't want to say crazy, but all these unbelievable things that happened that had never happened before in the past 4 decades, but now it's happening. And people are explaining to me in terms where it's past lifetimes. And I believe them. What would I say? What would I do? I would raise my hand. And before Buddha could say anything, I would probably ask Buddha, did you know that while you're meditating, all these things had happened? There were light shining out of your eyebrows. Did you know that? No. And I will probably ask, did you know that the light that shines, the ray that shines out of your eyebrow actually is like a projector, and it projected the images of the worlds, of thousands, tens of thousands of worlds, showing different people cultivating and practicing, showing different people in different realms, gaining wisdom and losing to affliction, all these different scenarios. Did you know that, Buddha? Did you know? Did you know that there were earthquakes moving around and people were thinking it's a good sign? Did you know that the earth was shaking and people were like, wow, this is a good sign? Did you know that at the time that you are meditating and maybe not listening or hearing, I don't know, maybe you were, that your disciples, the ones that we trusted the most, explained that this already had happened, in the past 20,000 times, and then we were all in it? Did you know that? No. So these are the questions that if I were there and if I had the guts, I would raise my hand, because all of that would be in my mind, right? Even if I had no guts to raise my hand to ask, that would be in my mind. And I would like to ask too, that Buddha, where were you when you were meditating? Did you go somewhere? Did you know all the things that happened around you? Why did you go into the meditation after the Sutra of Infinite Means? There's so many things I want to ask, right? So many things. But the Buddha did not answer to any one of those questions. Now, I understand nobody asked. Nobody. According to the sutra, no one asked. As soon as the Buddha came out of the meditation, no one had the opportunity to ask yet. I don't know it was how long. Maybe the Buddha, as Master Wood, right? If you remember, back then when Master would do the morning talk, the morning Dharma talk, and Master would come in through the middle and sit down, and then they will be coming in the time when we're meditating. There was sitting meditation, and afterwards, you would hear the beating of the instrument, and then you would see Master was rubbing the eyes and all the face and etc. to sort of, and so perhaps I'm thinking that Buddha would be the same coming out of meditation. So once again, all these were not annotated, so we would not know. I can only interpret or extrapolate what might have happened. And this is what I meant by, this is how you live the sutra. You jump in there, you swim in the ocean. Don't just look from afar and see, look at how blue the ocean is. Go into it. Jump in and think about all these things that had happened. If you were right there, what would you do? What would you say? What would you think? So using what we understand today, that's probably what would happen, right? Coming out of meditation, you're probably rubbing your hands, you're probably, moisturizing, or you're bringing temperature and warmth to your face and to your ears and eyes, right? So probably no one at that moment would ask Buddha any question. No one, okay? So, and even if someone were to ask, they would have to wait until the Buddha was sort of ready. And how would you know when Buddha was ready? No one knew, right? So, but the point is, I'm sure people were filled with questions. They have a lot of questions, because imagine you had just witnessed something that you had never seen before in the past 40 years. And I'm sure in the past longer, right? It's just that in the time that the Buddha was enlightened, you never seen it before. And even before the Buddha was enlightened, you probably never seen it either, right? So it's like, the shaking and all the, shining out of light, the light rays shining out of the eyebrow, you probably never seen before. So all these things. So you must have a lot of questions, but the Buddha didn't answer any of that. And I think this goes back to the similarities with chapter 1. Buddha wants you to focus not on all those things. No, just like chapter 1, all these things that happen, but chapter 1 is telling you, don't focus on me. All these things that happen, because I want to tell you that something big is coming up. Not this, but something big. So chapter 2 proves that by, at the very beginning, the Buddha comes out of meditation, does not answer, does not respond to anything that happened in chapter 1. That's a very important thing, right? Where now you see that the Buddha was trying to explain something or trying to teach us, to lead us somewhere where I don't want you to be thinking about what just happened in chapter 1. All those things were preparing you to hear, to listen, not going back to say, did you know that was very important? So in other words, I hope that I can explain this correctly. In other words, you just finished grade 6. You're going into grade 7. The grade 7, now the very first, I remember, and even moving on to high school, I remember more so moving on to high school, because I got my education 8th grade and 9th grade, 8, 9, 10, 8 and 9, I was in junior high school. And then 10, 11, 12, I was in high school. And I remember that the very first time I went into my high school, it's a different school in the US. I remember that when I went into the high school, the very first time, my teacher taught all of us that, that we need to do things differently in high school. And all the things before high school were preparing you for high school. And don't think about all your successes in junior high school, because it's going to be different. So this is very similar to chapter 1, is that chapter 1 is sort of like grade 1 through 9, where, it's preparing you for it. It's very important. It lays the foundation, the basics. But, 10th grade is not going to look back into what you learned in the previous 9 years. It's going to take you further and faster, quicker. So chapter 2 is just going to go straight forward. It's not going to go back and say, well, let's review what happened in chapter 1. No, it doesn't. It goes directly forward, right? So what did the Buddha actually say? And out of all this, right, the Buddha did not respond to anything that had happened, even though it was rare, even though it was something profound, even though it never happened before, even though the disciples explain in terms where no one can prove, but everybody believes. But no one asked, right? No one said anything. And the Buddha didn't say anything and just moves on. And it tells you, because that's not important. Okay, I really wanted to stress this, that it's not important. We get into a lot of details because we don't want to miss any details. However, Buddha clearly didn't want us to focus too much on what really happened in chapter 1. Buddha wanted us to focus on, well, then what happens next? So what did the Buddha say? The Buddha said, the wisdom of all the Buddhas is deep and profound, such that the disciples right now, the hearers and the solitary realizers, can never understand. And I wanted to go a little bit further than that. I've always, the more that I read into chapter 2, I'm still reading. The more that I reading this chapter 2, the more that I think that the Buddha was teaching us something beyond. And what I mean to say is that all the things that were easily materialized, like the tools, right? The 37 principles of enlightenment, the Four Noble Truths, the 12 cyclic links, all these things, right? The four infinite minds, and all these things that where you can enumerate, you can actually say 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, the 6 parameters, all these things, right? There were tools and there were guidelines, and the students, which were the hearers and the solitary realizers, they follow it to the dot. They follow it to the letter of the word. So they follow all the teachings. They follow all of this. They do exactly what was the Buddha saying. They did exactly that. And even that, the very first thing out of spoken by the Buddha in this, the most important treasure sutra. Some people said this is the king of sutras. The very first thing that the Buddha said in this king of sutras was that you are not going to understand this. And that profound first statement really got me to think, why? Why do you say this? People were looking up to you, to the Buddha. They were wondering, out of all these things that had happened, all the wonderful phenomenon that happened in the previous chapter, the things that really happened, right? The earth shook, the flowers came down, and the light rays comes out of the eyebrows and show us the world. All these things, the 20,000 Buddhas beforehand, all these things, right? It's a sign. It's a wonderful sign. It's a wonderful thing that's about to happen. And we know that it's a very important sutra, important lesson about to be preached. And then the first thing the Buddha said was, you don't get it. And that really lead me to further deeply contemplate, so what does that mean? And I think that why did the Buddha say that? I think during the time of meditation, I believe, because like I said, I jump into this sea, this ocean of the sutra. I don't just stand on the sidelines. I imagine that if I were the Buddha, according to what the Buddha said, how I was thinking. If the true knowledge and wisdom isn't just in the tools, you know, like you are focusing on giving the blanket, giving the bamboo bank, making sure that you donate and you do everything to the word. You give the blanket, you give the food, you have the bamboo banks, and you deposit money every day. You do that. However, you do not realize, or you do not feel that people are doing this, but they're not changing. They're doing this out of their behavior. And that's after 40 years of Buddha's teaching. I think Buddha realized that the students, while they are following the teaching, they're really not getting the teaching. They're not following it. So this is a time for change. It's time for change. And it's too late for non-change, meaning that if you don't change now, it's too late. You've got to change. And change to what? What's there to change? I think the answer is attitude. I want to go deeper. I want to go further. But I think, let me summarize because time is up. let me summarize what I meant by the change of attitude. I think we know that chapter 2, the skillful means, teaches us the path of the Bodhisattva, which is to go into the masses, go into the people, go into the crowd. Yes, and I think that the Buddha knew that when he said that, the students indeed were going into the crowd. They were following the teaching and they go into the crowd. However, imagine even at the time that there were people that did not fully believe the Buddha, right? There were people that were doubtful. Even today, there were people that do not completely trust Master Cheng Yen. And I would confess that I am one of them, where when it comes to certain things, I trust myself more than I trust Master. And in the case of the Jingsi herbal tea, and I think I mentioned this many times before, Master gave us what she believed, and she wanted us to believe too. And I chose to believe science. I chose to believe that until a medical report comes out, I would not think of it as anything more than a herbal, tea. It has no it has no medical, or it has no other benefits. So there were others that were still doubtful, and there were others that were still not believing. And you can imagine, if your teacher, you don't believe, or not at least fully, can you imagine going into the crowd and people? How could you learn from them? You're supposed to learn, treat everybody as Buddhas. Now, you have a Buddha right in front of you and you don't believe him. How are you going to go into the crowd and learn from them if you already don't believe them? If you already think that they're so low, if you already think that you are the foremost in wisdom, you are the disciple that you have followed the Buddha for 40 years. How is it possible that you're going to the crowd and listen to an old lady who had no education, who does not even know how to speak a word about Dharma? How would you learn from them? That is the attitude that must change. Otherwise, you could go into the crowd for millenniums to come. You will still not learn anything. And I think that was the main focus. So that if you yourself are not respectful of all the people and all the living beings there, that all could be Buddhas. And in other words, they are all your teachers. If you don't believe that, then it doesn't matter how many people you encounter, you're not going to learn. And I think that was the main message. So therefore, you can see that chapter 2 teaches us many tools that were already there before. However, redo these tools with a different attitude. Instead of thinking that I am a teacher, or I am the best student, and therefore I am the teacher of the Dharma to all the people who have not learned anything yet. I am so much more enlightened than all the other people. I'm so much better than all the people that haven't learned and hear anything about the Dharma yet. Instead of thinking that, think about, I understand now. Buddha's idea was for us to empty ourselves so that when we go into the crowd and go into the mass, that we are ready to learn. See what's there to be learned and then learn it. That's how the Buddha explained in the very next sentence that says that what Buddha had done was to accompany tens of thousands and millions and billions of the past Buddhas and learn from them. I think that was the key. If you don't change your attitude, don't look at the masses as your teachers. You are just going in and like, oh yeah, I'm into the masses. I'm into the crowd. I've already walked into the people. I listen to their stories, but are you willing to learn? Or have you learned nothing? You hear a lot, but you learn nothing. And that's the one thing that the Buddha feared the most. That yes, as a Buddha, all the disciples were here and listen and believe. But once all these disciples go into the crowd, they are not Buddhas in their eyes. So they're not Buddhas. So why would you bow to them? Kneel. How would you learn? How would you empty yourself to learn? Even in front of the Buddha, some of them already not do that. So how do you expect them to do that to the regular people? You can't. So if you don't change your attitude, nothing will be changed. Anyway, that's the extent of today's sharing. I apologize. Too many things that I spoke too much. But rather than going into the details of what I wanted to go through. But anyway, I really think that jumping into the sea of the suit and really be part of it, thinking what you would think in that situation, I think it's very powerful, and it gives you a very different perspective and gives you a very different meaning to when you hear the word skillful means 方便品. It now moves me, because the more I think about this chapter, before I just thinking about, oh yeah, it's 方便品. Now it's different. It's 方便品. See, it's all the same, but it's the same words, but now it carries a different meaning. Okay, so that's my sharing for today. Thank you all for listening, and thank you all for the wonderful stories that you share. Thank you.
And Brother Joe for another powerful session. Brother Joe's session to me is always like something you watch. It's a continuous series. By the time you reach the going to be climax. Oh, okay, we'll wait for next session. Okay, let's gather and listen next Saturday. We hope to listen to Brother Joe for the next wonderful session. Yeah, joining this session is like joining the journey of learning with Brother Joe, jumping into the sea of sutra, and hope that we could also practice as we listen. Also, we are also very grateful to our powerful sharers this morning, Sister Stephanie and Sister Moon, on this topic, exhausting lifetimes of retributions in this lifetime. We are grateful to Abode Master the Chuan for sharing it. Sisters are making it so powerful. Yeah, indeed, helping others is helping ourselves. Okay, brothers and sisters, maybe if it's okay, we take one picture. Convenient, please switch on the video. Take good care one as we walk into the masses this morning. Okay, thank you, brothers and sisters, for your presence. Okay, Sister Lily or Sister Stephanie, we all can help to take picture. Yeah. Okay, Brother Joe, Sister Stephanie, Sister Moon, and all the sisters that also shared their experiences. Indeed, all these are all the experiences that each of us will take in along in the journey. That is a process of transformations of all these experiences into the wisdom. Ka'an, brothers and sisters, for your support and presence. Hope that each of us will sustain this Dharma joy and take in another piece of Sangren's and Hualien love to our life. Let us invite Brother Joe to lead us in making 3 vows to the Buddha and Master Chuan as we depart to apply all these wonderful teachings in our everyday life. Let us pay our respects to our teachers of life, universal truth. Palms together, first bow. Second bow. Ka'an, brothers and sisters, take good care, stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Ka'an.
Take care, everyone.
Ka'an, everybody. Ka'an, Brother Joe. Ka'an, everybody, brothers and sisters. Bye-bye. Take care, yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
And Sister Stephanie, so awesome.
Yeah, back to back.
Yo, 真係 very good.
Ka'an.
Okay, stay safe.